Philippine National Idols Workshop. Ako po si Vlad Gonzales. Magandang hapon po sa ating mga nandito, sa mga nanonood sa ating live stream sa Likhaan Facebook page. Bago po natin umpisa ng session ni BJ Crisostomo para sa Dula, nabanggit kasi kanina yung tungkol sa mga Korean. So naisip ko tuloy na magandang magbukas sa programa ng may nakita po akong isang matandang kasabihang Koreano. Baka lang po na iba sa atin to kasi parang luma siyang dasal pero parang very popular translation niya. Sana po tama yung translation. I know love, it is such a funny thing, a mystery allure, gotta get to know you more. Catching feels like butterflies. If I say what's on my mind, would I hit bullseye? Ooh, shoot, I'm ready, aim, and fire. Yun po, maraming salamat. Matandang kasabihan po yun, baka alam ng iba. Thank you. Di po ako masyadong handa pero may lecture po ako at essay para sa session na ito. Keep up, co-fellows. Ang kakilala sa pagwawakas o mga mungkahing pagbasa sa proyekto ni BJ Crisostomo. Bago ko rin makalimutan, isa din sa konkretong hinihingi ng ating manunulat ay sa tingin na ating mga kasama ngayon, mainam ba na itrato ang proyekto bilang koleksyon na dadagdagan ng ibang mga dula o sa inyong pagtatasa mamaya, sa inyong assessment sa usapan, pwede bang pahabain yung dalawang dula at ito na yung buong koleksyon. So baka lang po makalimutan, ito yung gusto niya talagang makuha sa atin ngayong hapon. Kung may time kayo at kung may resources, baka masaliksik din yun na isa sa pinakahuling nagawa ni BJ na dula ay may pamagat na absurdo event day. Sa pinakamaiksi ito ay end of the world scenario pero for some reason yung mga nandoon sa mundong ito gustong magawa ng watch party, gustong gawa ng event at kahit matatapos na yung mundo, overworked, underpaid at very abused ang ating events organizer bilang si BJ din ay may ganung background. Punta tayo dito sa Bulaga. Sa proyektong ito nakapaglatag si BJ ng ilang mga paksakog na sa pagsulat ng dula. Kung kayo ay nagsusulat ng dula, kung medyo immerse sa sining na ito, maaaring mapatango kayo at maisip na, oo, baka nangyari din sa akin ito. Nauunawaan ko ang karanasan. Apat na punto po ang nilalatag na baka maka-reinforce, baka makabigay ng siguro magandang simulain kung hindi niyo pa alam kung saan papasok sa proyekto. Una po ay ang dula bilang anyong madulas sa memorya. Ibig sabihin, hindi to, si BJ nagsabi nito, hindi to parang librong nakalimbag na pag may na-miss ka, pwede mong i-read agad ng mabilis at mahihimay mo habang nagsisikap na magtala o mag-note ng alaala. Madulas sa memorya pero alam ko lahat naman tayo, kahit playwrights, gustong matandaan. May katangian ng paglalaho at muling pagpapakita ang genre ng dula. Halos laging bago ang karanasan ng pagpapalabas at panonood kada staging. Magandang pag-isipan o paglinian kung paano nakakapagtaguyod ng desire o pagnanasang huwag makalimutan sa isang anyong mabilisan naman, labas-pasok, palaging may nagbabago. Hanga nga po ako sa aking mga kasama sa teatro kasi sa isang pagkakataon pwede silang magtanghal ng dula na pinapatay lahat ng tao, malungkot lahat. Pagkatapos ng run na ito, babakasin agad ang stage, pwede silang magtanghal ng komedya naman na nagtatawanan. Ang bilis ng shift sa emotion, sa topics at lagi ako interested sa kung paano nila kinakaya ito. Pangalawang punto na pwede pag-isipan natin sa proyektong ito, ang mandudula ay laging hindi nag-iisa at bukas siya na hindi siya mapansin o maglaho. Collaborative ang term natin. Kolaboratibo ang anyong ito, laging maraming kasama at kalahok. Bukod sa actors, production team, artistic team, audience, manonood, teachers na nagtuturo ng play kung required, sponsors, syempre, kailangan ng pera, producers, at iba pa. May teksto naman, syempre, binabasa natin, pero mas lantad ang pagiging hindi absoluto ng teksto, hindi salita lamang ang magpapaganap o magtutukoy bilang buo na ang proyekto. Kung may buo man, kasi baka i-contest din natin kung may totoo bang buo o tapos ng dula. Hindi rin nag-iisa ang mandudula sa kanyang papel. Nagsusulat siya pero may day job siya madalas para kumita. Manunulat na gusto maging mapag-isa, solitaryo, pero umuugnay sa mga validating agency o institution, contest, publication, awards, etc. Na nabanggit ni BJ sa kanyang poetics. Siya ay tagapagsaliksik ng kanyang buhay, pero kasabay nun, is nasa buhay niya ang kanyang buhay. Citizen siya, mamamayan, pag may panahon siya, nag-a-assess siya sa buhay na tinatang kanyang suriin, i-explain bakit ba kailangan ko mag-time in, time out, etc. etc. Siya ay organisador habang ino-organisa din niya kanyang sarili. Sinisikat natin magmulat bilang mandudula sa genre natin, pero ayon kay BJ, kasabay din tayo namumulat. Lalo na nung sa kaso niya, ikukwento niya mamaya yung pagkatapos ng eleksyon. Pangatlong punto, yung tungkol sa pagtatapos o pagwawakas. Kaya ako nabanggit yung Absurdo Event Day, may fascination si BJ sa endings, pagtatapos, pagkagunaw. Una, saan natin pwede tignan ng pagwawakas? Sa paghahanap kung saan nga ba natatapos ang dula. Script ba? Staging ba ng buong run? Unang staging, restaging, reaction ba ng mga nakanood? Reflection paper, reaction paper. Sa kanila mga muling pagsulat, tweets about the play, blogs about the play, reimagining adaptations ng play, saan ba talaga natatapos? Pangalawa, na ibig sabihin siguro ng pagwawakas, ang paghahanap sa mga bakas na natapos na ang istoryang tinatanghal sa dula. Dula man ibang genre. Sa iba, ang ending o pagwawakas sa isang kagilagilalas na pagbagsak ng higanting bato, yung mga meteorite, sasabog na bomba. Usually yun yung idea natin ng end of the world. Sa iba, mas subtle. Ang pagwawakas ay nagsimula, hindi pala mas subtle, mas real, mas malapit. Ang pagwawakas ay nagsimula nung bumalik ang anak ng diktador sa kapangyarihan at ang lahat ng di mapangalanang pighati at dusang kakibat nito. Specific versions o alternate related topics. Nasa mundo tayo na mabanggit ka lang bilang terorista, pwedeng i-freeze ang bank account mo, pwede kang ipakulong, pwede kang mamatay. Napakahirap paniwalaan pero nangyayari. Pwede natin tingnan bilang ending yon. Kung gusto natin magpaka-positibo at mataas, pwedeng maging isang klase ng mataas na aspirasyon o pangarap ang pagtatapos. Ang pagwawakas ay maaaring katapusan ng paghahari ng mga naghahari-harian at magbabalik sa kapangyarihan ang mga nasa ilalim. Pwede rin, ano man na mangyari, nangyayari na sa ngayon ang pagwawakas. Habang nag-workshop tayo, habang nag-uusap, actually papunta na tayo sa isang klase ng ending. Umaandal sa mga kaliwang gawain habang nasa palihan ang pagtatapos ng ating istorya, kung ano man ang inisip nating pagtatapos nito. Huling punto sa diskusyon na maaaring magamit natin, itong hiwaga ng pagkagulat, bulaga, laging ginagamit ni BJ ito sa kanyang poetics, at pagmulat. Ano ba ang hahanapin nating kabula-bulaga sa project, sa play, sa kanyang karanasan? Sa iba, ang bulaga ay paghanap ng bago, pero nagsisimula rin sa mga ano ang bago sa sariling karanasan. Ang bulaga ay maaaring pagbubukas ng kamalayan sa pagtanaw na ang tunay na buhay ay nagiging kasing absurdo ng pinakabalahurang imahinasyon. O, sa panahong tunay na nga magwawakas sa mundo, ayun, may magagawa pa ba ang end of the world watch party? At muli ay habang may watch party, binabarat naman din at pinapahirapan ng creatives at organizing teams. Paano gagamitin ng wika ng dula, wikang Filipino para ipakilala ang mga pagbulagang ito? Alam ko po dito sa project na ito walang mga batang nagiging porcelana o kaya mga humongous dick kasi bukas pa po 'yun. So hahanapin natin kung saan may mga bakas ng nakakagulat o kagilagilas dito. Pero abangan din natin yung mga akda bukas. Para sa kalaman ng lahat, si national artist Amelia Lapena Bonifacio sa kanyang teatro Mulat, isa sa mga sinusulong niya bukod sa pagmumulat sa bata, paggamit ng wikang Filipino bilang isang instrumento na magbukas ng kaisipan ng mga bata. Interesado akong mapakinggan, mapag-usapan kung nakikita natin sa mga trabaho ni BJ ang ganitong potensyal, paggamit ng sariling wika para magmulat, mag-ugnay, magpaliwanag ng kanyang mundo. At ayun po, mula dito sa ilang mga posibleng talking points, bibigay ko na ang ating mikropono kay BJ para ikwento kanyang proyekto. At pagkatapos po nito, may 2-minute clip siya nung isa sa kanyang mga dula.
Maraming salamat, Brad. Magandang umaga po, hapon sa ating lahat. So, ayun, I've always considered myself to be a writer who always looks for community. Kaya siguro ang favorite genre ko sa lahat ng creative writing ay pagsusulat ng dula or script writing or playwriting. Kasi sa dula, ang ang teksto ay hindi nagtatapos sa manunulat. It's always in flux. Sa bawat rehearsals, meron ka makakausap na aktor, na director, na designer, na kung sino-sino. Makikipagbuno kayo, makikipag-navigate kayo, magkakaroon ng diskusyon tungo sa ikabubuti ng teksto. Hindi lang ng written text, pati ng performance text mismo, kung paano gagalaw yung tablado, kung ano yung mga simbolo na nasa stage, etc. etc. So, bago yung May 2022, mas English writer talaga ako. Mas personal na mga topics, mas philosophical topics yung mga binabaybay ko. Pero nagbago po lahat yon nung May 2022 nga, when the Fire Nation came. So, ayun po. Alam naman, nadadanasan naman natin ito lahat. Personally, ako, nabulaga ako neto. Parang lahat ng napag-aralan ko, lahat ng tinuro sa akin bilang isang estudyante, parang mali lahat. Ang sakit nun. I actually stopped a project, something I was working on sa gitna ng yung narinig ko yung balita. Yung pagkabulagan na yon, napatigil ako at parang change course. Hindi na pwedeng gentle na lang. Kailangan maging mas diretsyo. Kailangan mas bumulaga din ako. Kung binabulaga ako, kailangan ko rin bumulaga. Kailangan to the point na. Ayun po. So, next slide po. Ayun, ang naging creative response ko, pati ng ibang mga kaibigan, ay buuin ng Bulat Art Movement. So, isa tong volunteer group ng mga ng visual artists, ng painters, ng writers, ng actors, ng theater people, ng film people, etc. na para tukuyin yung political discussion ng panahon ngayon. Ayun yan, hindi na pwedeng manahimik. Oras ng mulatin ng sarili, hindi na pwedeng sarili na naisip, oras ng magpahayag, oras ng pag-usapan kung ano yung nangyayari ngayon. Yun yung pakiramdam namin. So, it's a volunteer group na wala kaming bahay tanghalan, na parang nagkikita-kita lang kami for production. So, over February and March, nagka 6 shows na kami sa very weird venues. Nagkaroon na kami na show sa isang bar, nagkaroon na kami na show sa isang sa gitna ng mall, sa gitna ng food court. Nagkaroon na we wish to bring the discussion to people. At sa bawat palabas na yon, nagbabago rin yung, dahil nagbabago yung kausap namin, nagbabago rin yung paraan ng pag-usap ng wika namin. So ayun po. So next slide please. Ang naging dalawang piyesa ko para sa Mulat ay itong dalawa, yung pinasa ko rin for this workshop. Ang Lolo Long Hair, pati OFW. So, ayun po, na-stage na po siya 6 times. Pero, ayun, tulad na nasabi namin kanina ni Sir Vlad, na ang Dula naman ay never talaga natatapos. Kahit naman si Sophocles, si Shakespeare, rene-revisit, rene-review pa rin ngayon. So, very open pa rin siya sa pagtitibay. So, ayun po, yung OFW, yung parehong Dula, tulad na nasabi kanina, natanghal siya sa iba-ibang venue. So parang through the actors' own experience, iniiba din namin siya kung sino yung kausap. Kunwari, nagka-show kami sa Marriott Hotel for the Manila Coffee Festival. Mas Ingles, mas pumunta doon yung wika namin. Nagkaroon kami ng show para sa mga public school students ng Marikina. Iniba rin namin yung wika. Ayun, dinedepende namin sa kausap yung paraan namin. So parang nagiging, yes, the text is literature, pero performance text pa rin siya. So medyo ina-adjust namin siya. So, ayun, nagkaroon ng cuts, changes, physicality, kahit yung physicality nung piyesa, nagbabago dun sa collaborators namin. So, si Joy de los Santos, is siya actor from Ateneo Entablado. Si J.S. Mojenes, isa siyang performance artist. Si Jessie Talara, isa siyang guro. So, ayun, yung kahit yung experiences din nila, nag-isolate nga rin yung text ng Lolo Long Hair to what it is today, yung nasa inyo ngayon. Pati si Fernanda, pati si Eugene naman, ganun din for OFW, Balatid ng Mundo. So, next slide please. So, ito yung synopsis, di ko na po dadaanan dahil nandiyan naman po sa harap ninyo. Daan po na, no? So, ang Lolo Long Hair po, ang mga tama na gusto kong tukuyin, ang pagnakaw ng identidad sa paraan ng superstructure, parang yung Lolo Long Hair, all he has is his hair. Kukunin tasahan ngayon ng administrasyon. Tapos noon, I guess ang pinakatanong niya, sino na nga ba ang may who has to fight right now? So, ang sagot ng ginawa tayo. Yung estilo niya, sinubukan kong gumamit ng comedy, pati na melodrama, para mas tumama sa masa. I hope, tama naman. Tapos na, yung pangunahing tunggalian ay laban sa ngayon, sa Barsido, sa Barsido, ipahayag sa play, gagamitin ng linya ng mga tauhan. Life is a rally, so everything is political now. Yung ayan, si Ginoong Tiburcio, pagkatapos yung butitin yung buhok ni Lolo Longhair, ano nga pangalan niya ngayon, sa title to identity yung buhok. And then, tara na Lolo, ituloy niyo natin ang laban, last line ng play yan. So, ang pinaka-point ay tayo na kailangan lumaban ngayon. Next slide, please. So, for OFW naman, karapatan ng pahayag, freedom of speech, ang pinaka-pinupunto niya. Ang estilo naman, sa dalawang Dula, mas gusto ko to personally, dahil dito ako nanggaling. Absurdist theater, pati theater of cruelty. Yung absurdist theater na pinaghuhugutan ko lang dito ay yung man facing the void, the impossible. So I guess dito yung man ay tayo, ang void ay well sila. So ayun, sa pangunahin itong garian, laban naman pa rin sa ngayon, pati katotohanan laban sa disinformasyon. Ayun po, next slide po. Key messages. Ayun, yung kahit ano naman sabihin natin ngayon, nasa kanilang kapangyarihan. So, what's the point? Pero I guess the point is we have to continue on saying it again and again, use the subtle power of art, of literature, to ignite change, to inspire change. Tapos noon si Limbel naman, sinabi niya na kung kaya nila gawin ito sa akin, kaya rin nila gawin sa inyo. So, very pointedly na sinasabi na let's not take this lying down. And then move on po tayo. So ngayon, natutulog muna si Mulat, bilang medyo pagod kami after 6 shows. Pero eventually, tataguyod ulit namin ito, so hopefully with better forms ng OFW at Lolo Longhair sa mga komento, sa napapagpitibay sa mga komento makukuha sa araw na to. Maraming salamat po.
I-play lang natin.
Vote wisely. Panghawakan niyo yung mga karanasan natin sa pamilya. Please. Kung inuluklok niyo rin yun sa kapangyarihan, hindi na ako uwi. Sunod na lang ang Pilipinas. This is Limuel de Corazon. Please, I can try.
That this is the script of your very first YouTube video, verbatim?
Kayo rin naman may hawak na kapangyarihan. Kayo may hawak ng tama't mali. Nababahalaga ng mga sagot ko.
Are you an enemy of the state?
No!
So that means yes!
Hindi!
Umuwi ka ba ng Pilipinas para maghasik ng langis? Isa ka bang terorista?
Oo!
Marinig niyo yun! Isa siyang terorista! Kaya sa'yo ng asawa! Sinakain ka ba?
Ayun po yung short clip. Maraming salamat po.
Salamat pagbati kay DJ sa kanyang ibinahagi sa atin. Binubukas na po natin sa ating talakayan ang session na ito. Meron po bang gusto mag-umpisa?
Nag-note ako para hello. Ayan. Para hindi ko makalimutan yung mga naisip ko lang na habang binabasa. Unang-una, gusto ko lang din purihin muna yung akda no, bilang isang dula at na habang binabasa ko siya actually, nakakatawa na siya on its own eh. At text pa lang siya. Hindi ko pa nakikita yung dula pero natatawa ko at natutuwa ako doon sa pagkaka-conceptualize tsaka sa pagkakasulat nito. Kumbaga, ito yung mga akda na hindi na pinapaligoy-ligoy. Talagang ipinapakita na yung intensyon at yung kanyang punto, no? Ang comment ko, no, total kanina nabanggit na yung pangunahing tanong ng mandudula na sasagutin ng bumasa kung ito ba ay mas okay para sa atin na pahabain o i-retain na lang siya as short. Siguro doon ako magmumula doon sa polarities nung unang dula, no, yung si Lolo Longhair tsaka yung manager ba yun, yung manager na si Tiburcio, no? At tingin ko para mas ano pa yung polarities, ewan ko kung pwede sigurong mas pag-isipan yung ano kaya kung mas maging hardcore pa na Marcos loyalist si Tiburcio, no? Kasi parang constrained pa rin yung kanyang yung parang nag-hold back pa rin siya doon sa kanyang identity tsaka yung sa kanyang opinion, no, doon sa buong dula, no? Parang mas mapapalitaw siguro, tingin ko lang as a reader, no, nung dula, na mas maging hardcore na yung talagang todong Marcos loyalist na si Tiburcio, no? Para siguro doon pa mas mapapalitaw yung yung mga argumento nung mismong nobela nung dula, no, na ito yung sinasabi ni Lolo Longhair, no? At ito naman yung binabangga niyang argumento ni Tiburcio. Tsaka yung pang pagiging mas pasista na estilo, no, ng personalidad. Baka pwede ring gawing option yun, no, na si Tiburcio ay mas mapalitaw bilang isang ganong personahe, no? Also, parang yun din yung isang magandang chance para ma-ridicule kung yun man yung potential ng dula. Yung mga argumento ng gustong magpalimot, no, doon sa memory ng karahasan ng martial law and all. As well as pangalawa, yung character ni Elsie na napakagandang character din, no. Parang ang sagot ko ay mas maganda siyang sigurong pahabain pa, no. Yung kay Elsie, feeling ko mas maganda rin na mas i-push pa yung arc niya, no, na ito yung nangyari pagkatapos noong triumphal end, no, tapos yung pag-walkout ni Tiburcio, ito yung nangyari, no, parang si Elsie yung kaganapan, no. So ang sagot ko ay ganun din doon sa iba pang mga dula ay pahabain kung kaya, no. Yun yung sagot ko. Thank you.
Maraming salamat, Romel, Meme. Maganda yung punto niya tungkol sa paglilinya at baka may tugon din kayo mamaya. Gaano ka-hardcore, ka-hardline ba o hindi ba sa linya nagmumula ang inyong mga tanong? Si Miss Iza ay naantig ng sapat at siya magsasalita ngayong pagkakataong ito.
Hello, ayan. Una sa lahat, pagbati po sa mga akda. Sobra akong na-entertain sa dalawang dula. May mga punto na sobrang nakakatawa at nakakaaliw para sa akin. Gusto ko yung pagka in your face niya sa pagtalakay ng mga mahalagang issue kasi agree ako dun sa mga nabanggit kanina sa pagtalakay ng poetika na kailangan natin yun. Lalo na ngayon. Pareho kay Meme na yung sagot ko dun sa tanong ay pahabain. Parang okay, kaya pang pahabain. Meron pang pwedeng mga i-flesh out na mga bahagi. Nabanggit niya kanina yung sa unang dula, si Elsie, na yung after, baka pwede pang ipakita ko ano nangyari sa kanya. Ako naman, personally gusto kong makita pa yung relationship nila ni Lolo Longhair. Kasi sa una, yung feeling ko parang ayaw niya kay Lolo Longhair. Kailan? So yung tanong ko na nilagay ko dito, wait, may notes. Ayun, saang punto siya humanga ng sobra kay Lolo Longhair kasi di ko masyadong makita yung point na nag-root for na siya para kay Lolo Longhair, na nakita niya yung sarili niya na magpapatuloy ng laban para kay Lolo Longhair. So, mahalaga para sa akin na ma-highlight yun kasi marahil yun din yung point na the audience will also root for Lolo Longhair and feel na kailangan din nilang ituloy yung laban para sa kanya. Tapos, yung katulad mo, mas gusto ko rin yung pangalawang piece. Nakuha ko sa Dula na para siyang isang anyo ng torture. Feeling ko tinotorture ako habang binabasa ko yung parts, yung may tae, ganyan. Tapos parang yung pakiramdam na gusto ko nang tumigil pero di ako makatigil kasi kailangan ko siyang matapos. So damang-dama ko yun na highlight yung fake news, paninira, yung threat sa buhay mo pag nagsasabi ka ng katotohanan, mga ganyan. Sobrang nakakalugmok at kung yun yung goal ng Dula, nakamit niya para sa akin yung layunin. Pero as a very hopeful person, hinahanapan ko pa rin ng hope yung Dula. Mahirap i-shake off yung feeling of hopelessness after niya basahin. Lalo na yung ending. Medyo ironic kasi gusto ko yung ending na parang uulit lang ulit, parang ganyan. Pero nawawalan ako ng hope doon. Pero ano yun, mind-blowing ending for me. Ayun po. So, yeah. Yun lang. Thank you. Congrats po.
Thank you, Isa. Si Loaf ay nagtaas ng kamay. May nagtaas pa po isa kanina, tama po ba? Bukod kay Loaf. Sino yung susunod natin? Okay, si Domsi. Pagkatapos si Loaf.
Magandang hapon. So, yun nga, pagbati kay BJ. Dahil hindi lang nagpasa dito ng akda, kundi naitanghal na pala yung dalawa. So, pinupuri ko rin yung talagang tahasang tugon dun sa tawag na ating panahon na labanan ng diktadorya at palaga ng fake news. So, napaka-swak sa zeitgeist natin at isa rin ito sa mga pinapangarap kong magawa eventually. Yung itong out-and-out art versus dictatorship. Ang comment ko lang po sa Lolo Longhair, una sa lahat, kailangan bang manyak si Lolo Longhair? So, gets ko naman na may pinanggagalingang trope ito, yung ganitong klase ng matandang mahilig. Pero siguro, ang natanong ko lang, kailangan ba na si matandang mahilig ay nandito sa dulang ito? Dahil, syempre, parang natali natin siya sa aktivismo eh. Parang baka na-undermine yung gusto nating tanaw kay Lolo Longhair bilang sympathetic character. Kasi ako, hindi ako tawa sa kanya. Parang ba yan? Ayun. Pangalawa, naalala ko may mga napanood akong dula sa VLF at some point na out and out din na anti-Marcos, anti-Duterte. And ako, clearly naman, yung politics ko, swak doon. Pero may, minsan feeling ko may fine line na dapat baybayin na pagka masyadong didactic yung pyesa or kapag mali sa parang nasa maling bahagi ng pyesa yung didacticism, nagiging hindi siya, nababawasan yung kapangyarihan nung pyesa na itawid yung mensahe. Dito kasi, na dun sa part na biglang humirit siya, kilala ko sinong binoto mo, Dicta Jr., parang sa akin, parang medyo out of place. Kasi parang walang nangyari sa interaction ni Tiburcio tsaka ni Lolo Longhair na kinailangan niyang sabihin yon. No? Parang syempre may personal history sila na inuungkat ng dula, pero baka mas impactful kung lilitaw yan lahat bigla sa dulo eh. Yung ganung animosity sa pagitan nila. Baka nga maganda i-explore, sabi ni Meme kanina, na baka nga dapat out and out supporter. Pero sa palagay ko, mas maganda nga na na hindi siya out and out na parang fair weather politician yung dating. Kasi feeling ko yun yung pinaka insidious na klase ng evil, yung parang kung ano yung madali, kung na hindi siya naniniwala, hindi niya ideolohiya, yung ideolohiya ni Marcos. Naniniwala lang siya na ito yung useful, ito yung beneficial para sa akin. So, ako naman, gusto ko yung medyo full neutrality ni medyo mas center yung politics ni Ginoong Tiburcio. Ang huli kong comment dito, parang nabilisan ako dun sa pagbigay ni Lolo Longhair. Sige, guptan niyo ako. Parang gets ko na okay, merong moralidad na kasama, yung needs of the few versus the needs of the many, pero kung yun yung central conceit natin na ang kalayaan niya ay nakatali sa buhok, bakit ang bilis niya ibinigay? At dahil doon, sang-ayon ako na dapat siguro palawigin yung kwento, punan yung question, ano ba si LC at si Lolo Longhair, ano ba yung relationship ni Lolo Longhair sa audience na ibang mga matanda, kay Tiburcio, etc. etc. Tulad nila, mas gusto ko yung pangalawa, si OFW. Gustong-gusto ko yung pagkabaligho niya, lalo na yung iisang tao lang yung gumaganap ng lahat ng apologies na parang iisa ang muka ng kanilang pang-aapi versus sa nagiging may distinct character ka versus yung iisang crowd, no? Iisang muka ng lahat ng mga nang-aapi sa kanya. Sa palagay ko, although palagay ko medyo kulang din yung build up sa akin. Feeling ko dapat yung escalation ng pagto-torture sa kanya dapat mas gradual kasi sobrang ganda nung pinakain siya nung adobo with star anise and lots of love, no? Pero parang nagulat ako na ini-interview siya tapos biglang ang next step nila ay pakainin siya nung nilutong katawan ng baby niya. Parang, di ba, masyadong abrupt para sa akin. Although, may nakagigitla siyang effect, sa palagay ko, baka dapat mas may escalation pa ng mas microaggression sa pagitan ng interrogation tsaka nung dulo. Ayun, at feel ko at some point dapat mabitag din yung main character into saying something outright laban dun sa gobyerno, laban kay Marcos, na hindi galing dun sa recording nung nakaraan. Something new that they can use against him. At baka isa yung pwedeng elemento nung pag-escalate ng microaggression at eventually yung out-and-out torture at cannibalism na pinagawa sa kanya sa dulo. Pero ayun, masaya akong nabasa ko yung mga dula ni BJ. So, maraming salamat, pagbati.
Salamat, Loaf. Bago ang order natin ay si Domsi, si Bomen, tapos si Vida. Tapos habang nilalapit kay Domsi yung mic, mamaya sagutin ni BJ to kasi na-cover namin yun sa diskusyon na panimula. Pero gusto ko sana tandaan niyo yung nilatag ni Loaf sa atin. At nung iba rin tukol sa yung ilang po na dun sa pagiging abrupt, tapos yung pagiging kapos dun sa ilang, yung alam mong pag tinuro sa creative writing class, hahanapin yan, escalation ng conflict, plotting, characterization. Baka lang kasi may factor din, pero hindi ko alam kung gano'ng kabenta ito sa inyo, yung factor na advocacy play siya, baka at very short play siya, baka may kailangan ka isuko. Pero again, pwede naman sabihin na bullshit yan. Pero i-float lang natin at baka may makasagot din sa inyo. Okay po, ang order natin si Domsi, Ramon Guillermo at si Vida. Sige po, Domsi.
Actually, medyo mabilis lang kasi sinabi na sa totoo lang. Number one, nagustuhan ko siya. And then, although para sa Lolo Longhair, I agree with si Lof na parang mas gusto ko na hindi siya all-out fascist si Ginoong Tiburcio. Kasi, yun nga, parang if they're back-to-back, if they come together, yung sort of all-out fascist, yun na yung sa second play. Kasi yun talaga yung state oppression in the most clearly visible sense. Whereas this one is with Ginoong Tiburcio, you see a version of the logic where you might give in if you're in the middle ground. You think of yourself as centrist, or you think of yourself as in various ways na parang, no, I'm just looking out for the people, etc. And it hooks you in that sense. So, feeling ko maganda na there's that duality. And I was thinking that si LC, yun nga, gets ko naman yung parang, that's too short, no? But I was thinking LC's shift nga is a little strange to me kasi but sa page 36, she was saying pa nga, parang, let's not talk politics. Parang in her mind, which is a typical thing na for that kind of mentality. It's the kind of mentality that would actually align well with si Tiburcio. I was thinking it would make sense na her progression goes na she's actually a little bothered by si Lola Longhair. Is actually slightly convinced at first by si Tiburcio. And then but something happens that she starts to see that, oh wait, there's a problem there. So she shifts from being perhaps leaning more towards Tiburcio, which makes sense, which is what most people are. But something occurs to shift it towards Lolo Longhair. I'm not entirely sure what that has to be, but feeling it's getting there, but parang may missing pa rin. Yun. And then the last thing one lang is just yun, with the issue of the hopelessness, this is a kind of maybe a cheap fix. So maybe you shouldn't even think about it. But I was thinking na, well, if you reverse the order, the extremely hopeless one comes first. And the second one where there is some sense of fighting back comes second. It could, at least it ends, at least the back-to-back compilation ends with some hope. You know. Thank you.
Omen, Vida at si Butch Dalisay ay kasama sa ating pila.
Siguro yung gusto ko gawa ng comment ay yung Lolo long hair. Pero sa kabuuan, ang tanong ko nga ay sino kaya ang audience, no? I mean yung audience ng mga dula. Siyempre kung dula, talagang may isip tayo ng community, kung saan tayo sasa-entablado ng ating naisulat. Kaya ngayon sa panahon na ito ay talagang nakita natin yung pangangailangan na maglunsad ng mahigit na pag-isikap na makuha yung isip at kalooban ng maraming mga Pilipino, 'di ba? Na sa iba't ibang dahilan ay pumili na bumoto doon sa kanilang binoto, 'di ba, noong nakaraang eleksyon. Kaya kung pag-isipan natin ano kaya yung magiging epekto ng ganitong mga dula, kung ang ating pakay ay kumbaga makipag-usap, makipag-dialogo doon sa maraming mga mamayang ito, o kung ang ating mga tagapanood ba yung mga katulad din natin dito sa Writers Workshop, na malinaw naman kung ano yung ating mga maraming politika natin, marami sa atin na yun nga na sang-ayon o kasang-ayon itong mga direksyon, at least sa pangkalahatan ng mga dulang ito. Ngayon, doon sa long hair, Lolo long hair, siguro may ilan na akong mga obserbasyon bilang isang interesado rin doon sa kasaysayan ng aktivismo, na parang dito ay kumbaga isang reference point, kumbaga lumilitaw dito yung kasaysayan ng aktivismo, tinanong ko nga si Romel kanina kung siguro kailan ka kaya pinanak, so let's say 90s, so let's say 60s, 70s, 80s, matitindi yung mga panahon na yan para sa aktivismo, at siguro bahagi din ng kailangan nating pag-aralan yung mga kasaysayan, except basically what we're talking about here is yung counterculture, na parang dala-dala ni Lolo long hair, at kung tutusin ay yung pagbabawal kumbaga sa mahabang buhok na martial law yan. Immediately after the imposition of martial law ay pinagbawal, kaya nga nagkaroon ng term pala na max tolerance, maximum tolerance ng buhok. Na yun yung aming pagpapagupit, kami yung na-joey ng mga 80s, mga max tolerance yung mga gupit namin noon, Pero hindi naman sobrang required. Kasi by the middle 70s, medyo na mainstream na yun ng mga long hair, mga hippie, hindi man Florante, who is really Marcos, but having long hair, etc. So hindi na rin big deal talaga ang mahaba ang buhok, kumbaga sa Philippine kumbaga nationalist, etc. It was really not a big issue anymore, but in the immediate implementation, doon nga yung pagbabawal ng long hair. Pero before that, in the 60s, you'd have, for example, yung mga hippies, so-called, with interested in folk music, mainly mga John Baez, mga Bob Dylan, That's what they were listening to, That's what sort of the political orientation that they were, having, with this kind of music. We had a kind of vibe, ganyan. And also you'd have yung mga activists, of that era. Marami rin debate noon. Makita mo kay Renato Constantino about appearance, long hair, etc. Ang tinatanong nila Renato Constantino is, kung kayo, mga activists kayo, gusto nyo mag-organize sa mga tao, do you really want to look so different from ordinary people? Do you really want to alienate yourselves as young activists from others? I mean, it's not really prescriptive like that, pero he was just raising the problem. Na baka masyadong ibang itsura ninyo mga aktivista, hindi na kayo makapagparami, makapagpalawak, makapagpaliwanag, bigla na lang may prejudice laban sa inyo, nalilitaw, ganyan ang tsura ninyo, And then, so you'd have all this in the 70s, And then, yung main song mo, na Rage Against the Dying of the Light, Ano yan siyempre galing yan sa, Chikoy Pura, Jerks, Jerks was a punk band, basically, and punk was in a certain way against yung hippie thing, ano? Kumbaga, very different ang vibe niya, very different ang musical sense, no, of punk, no? And so you could see that. I mean, sina Chico, they don't look like, like hippies, ano ba? Ibang itsura ni na Chico, no? So parang meron ditong parang telescoping, parang merong yung countercultural traditions, no, which were facing Marcos. They were sort of telescope. They were sort of like just merged, no, into a single idea, ano, nawala yung mga nuances between all of these kinds of resistance, ano. So in the 80s, it wasn't really a big deal, long hair anymore, ano, for activists, ano. So let's say si Lolo Longhair was born in 1952. That's why sabihin natin siya ay 70 na. Ano nung nangyayari ito? So eksakto 1972 pinutol yung buhok niya, ano? I mean, as a young man, no? But what happened to him, ano, through this period, and what in the 80s? Ano yung kanyang mga struggles na pinasok, no? So parang yung the time, yung texture of this period, ano, and what he lived through, ano, and yung mga symbolisms that he brought with him, parang mixed up, ano, para sa akin. Hindi naman this is fictional, no, this is not realistic, ano. But as we can see, very complex ang historical material, which can add a lot of depth, ano, to what you're talking about, no. So kumbaga para sa amin siguro, parang medyo confused yung kanya mga countercultural symbolism, ano. Perhaps for kids today, no, for younger people today, it's just like that, no. Ganyan talaga kayo, eh. But it's kind of like a caricature of what counterculture is about.
Salamat. Si Vida po ang ating kasunod. And then Butch Dalisay at Luna Sicat Cleto ang nasa pila natin. Pwede po tayo mamaya magtaas ng kamay kung sino pa yung susunod.
Okay. Okay. Like everyone else, congratulations. And I like most other people here, I like yung OFW more than Lola Longhair. And I will expand on that in a bit. Before that, I want to jump off what si Ralph was saying, na dapat mas gradual yung progression from in OFW, the torture. I think what he means is you need more foreshadowing about the cannibalism. So, like, make a mention of it somewhere earlier in the text, unrelated to his situation. So, so your goal is to shock, pero you're also trying to prime us for the kind of shock that we're going to experience. Now, going to yung Lola Longhair, the reason that I like it less is because, and actually I wasn't going to talk about this, pero nabigyan ako ng courage ni Ralph to say it. And I feel pretty strongly about the maniac thing. I guess consider this as a sensitivity read, as someone who is born and presents as female. You're fighting against fascism, and your fight has to be intersectional. So in that regard, I don't feel like this message in Lola Longhair was for me, kasi maniac si Lolo. And also Elsie's 19, and that's kind of, oh no, the 2 layers of oh no. So, and I think the progression of Elsie from being where she is at the beginning to being more sympathetic toward yung cause ni Lolo would be more convincing if si Lolo wasn't actually perpetrating harm against her. It doesn't look like harm to other people on the surface, but it is harm. It is emotional, psychological harm on a teenager, and you just don't see it. And I also feel like, I mean, you're probably not going to get a 19-year-old actress, but your actress would have to be very, very, very good at playing such a subtle psychological warfare going on with this kind of thing. So yun lang. Thank you for the privilege of this.
Salamat. I think I'm working myself toward a question, but humor me for a minute. If I recall my other life in playwriting, nagsimula ako bilang manudula sa Filipino bago ako naging kwentista sa Ingles. At after many plays and screenplays and so on, iniwan ko yung pandudula precisely for the reason that you embrace it, na hindi ka nag-iisa. Kasi gusto ko maging mag-isa. Dahil the playwright goes through at least several levels of anxiety that fictionists and poets do not. First is the anxiety of finishing your work and then finding a producer for it and then seeing if it works with the audience and hoping that your play gets a second life, a third life. Bihira sa atin yung isang dula mo na umiikot at mahaba yung buhay, mahigit sa isang produksyon. Whereas kung fictionist ka, o poet ka, o upo ka lang, maaaring sa isang maghapon, tapos mo na yung trabaho mo, masaya ka na doon. Posible nga wala kang pakialam kung magugustuhan ng ibang tao, basta natapos mo na. Noong binabasa ko yung mga dula ni Jay, may mga questions na dumadating sa isip ko, na tinatanong ko yung sarili ko, what is the form and message that will do the job of communicating what we need to communicate to our fellow Filipinos today? Ito ba yung tamang forma? Ito ba yung tamang mensahe? Honestly, hindi ko alam. Kasi nga, posibleng ibang henerasyon na kayo. Kung click sa inyo, edi okay. Kasi nga, lalo na yung mga naghahanap kanina ng medyo pahabain ito o develop ito, tinatanong ko rin sarili ko, sa ganitong klaseng dula ba, kailangan talaga yan? O talaga bang yung ganitong dula ay kayang buhayin ng mga pangungusap na lang, mga deklarasyon? Hindi ko alam. Ang tradisyon kasi namin noon, ibang-iba. In fact, ako yung sariling training ko, Chekhov pa tsaka Brecht. Nung sinubukan namin nung unang salgo ng sabihin nating protest theater, tinatawag pa namin nung Dulaang sa Deka. Naglabas kami ng isang Malabrechtian na play ko, no? Meron pang mga white face at may mga pa-abstract na chinugi agad ng ng partido yun o kung sino pa man. Di pwede yan. Walang mga subtlety, kailangan magwageway tayo ng mga bandila. Di napunta na nga doon sa sa Peking opera style na teatro. At that point, parang, siyempre noon, thrilled ako noon. Pero after a while, parang corny na. Kasi paulit-ulit na lang. You depend on gestures to carry the message. I'm sure there has to be, I'm not saying you have to do this, but there has to be a refinement of both message and method. I'm thinking, for example, that in situations like this, you can employ what to me seems to be, kay Brecht, meron siyang parang tatawagin kong situational wit. Hindi lang yung binibigkas ng karakter, kundi doon mismo sa sitwasyon. Halimbawa, sa Good Woman of Sichuan, meron siyang karakter na ang trabaho niya ay water seller, nagtitinda siya ng tubig, pero sa kalagitnaan nito, biglang umulan. Yung ganyang klaseng mga laro. So hindi lang dependent sa what is verbalized. Isa pa dun sa mensahe, ano ba gusto nating sabihin? Sino ba ang may sala? Para sa akin kasi, sa akin lang ito, and even before the Marcos restoration, ang nakikita ko talagang problema, kahit nung panahon pa ng batas militar, ay hindi lang yung may mga Marcos dyan, kundi may complicity ang taong bayan. Pumapayag tayo eh. At hindi lang sagot dyan o di magbagaway tayo ng bandila. Kundi yung kapitbahay mo, yung kamag-anak mo na okay pala sa kanya ang tokhang, okay pala sa kanya yung ganito. Di ba yung ganyang close quarters, familiar, intimate, political drama ang gusto kong matugunan. So siguro ibang ano na yon, ibang bagay na yon, but I really want to see where theater like this, I'm sure it has its place, but I also want to see what the options are for young playwrights today.
Nandun na Sicat, Cleto po nasa kasunod natin. Tapos Nadera, tapos Jun Cruz Reyes na nasa ating pila.
I-reduce ko na lang sa dalawang tanong yung comment ko para dun sa dalawang dula mo. Dun sa unang dula, yung Lolo Long Hair, unang basa ko pa lang at sana hindi naman tumasamain ng mandudula. At tingin ko naman sanay ka sa ganitong diretsyon na pagsabi ng palagay ng isang nagbasa, talagang nabilisan ako dun sa development nung dulo. Sa pagsulat ng dula, napakahalaga ng timing at saka, kumbaga, yung explosion at the right moment. At parang yung kulang dun sa Lolo Long Hair, hindi nahanda. At nasabi na ito ng iba. Pero I cannot emphasize it enough dahil nanginayang ako dun sa material eh. What does the long hair stand for din? Kung siya'y isang matandang tauhan, pwede mong itali sa loss of virility, at meron kang tinatangka na pahayag na political statement yung paggupit, hindi ba? Pero dahil he's the only lone character na nagupit, naiisip ko to, laro lang, what if may ibang ginugupitan din sa audience para mas sangkot yung may parang stake yung nanonood at parang lumapot yung kahulugan ng pagpapagupit na yon. At kung ibig mo rin, i-push pa yung masyado rin nakatali sa real. Ewan ko kung naiintindihan may ibig ko sabihin na parang pwede mo pang paglaruan na what if ito'y nabubuhay sa panahon ang buhok mismo ay life force na kapag ginupit mo yan, patay. Parang ganun. So, ewan ko kung nakakatulong ito para sa'yo. Kasi laro rin to ng imahinasyon. Yung ikalawa kong comment dun sa OFW play mo, I object to the singular gender of the multiple characters. Kasi parang may sinasabi ka rin tungkol dun sa mga babae na tanging sila lamang ang problema dun sa dula. At alam ko naman na rin-represent nito yung iba't ibang mga muka, di ba, ng co-option, kaya yung pagiging sipsip, corrupt, at iba pa. Pero bakit kailangang babae lang yung gender niya? Hindi kaya mas mag-work kung iba-ibang mga kasarian ito, kung ipupush mo yun. Tapos, tingin ko, ang ginagawa namin in effect dito sa community na to at sa circle na ito is a dramaturgical reading. At talagang kailangan mong pag-isipan pa yung conceptual frame ng nasulat mo dahil tumataya ako na ang mga mahuhusay kasing dula ay eksperimento rin ng concept at nakita na natin yan na paulit-ulit kina Brecht, kina Sartre, Ionesco. kung nagpapaka-theater of cruelty ka lang, pag tinignan mo yung British models nito, aba, mas malupit yun. Sina Sarah Kane at iba pa, iba yung kanilang notion ng cruelty. Kasi ang cruelty ay hindi lang yung literal na pakakainin ng yung chinop-chop na member of his family. Pero the cruelty is supposed to make you wake up. It's not supposed to have you disgusted. Parang dapat tumaas yung ma-elevate yung pag-iisip nung manonood dito. Parang katulad ng modelo ng Medea na pinatay, hindi ba ni Medea ang kanyang trahedya na pala, hindi theater of cruelty. Pero effective yun kasi parang nararamdaman mo yung naiintindihan mo actually si Medea dun sa kanyang ginawa. So, nagustuhan ko rin yung comment kanina tungkol dun sa pagtatanong ng age. Kasi ibig sabihin nun, babalik ka dun sa tauhan. Ang dula para sa akin ay hindi lang pagsasatauhan, kundi natatauhan yung tauhan tungkol sa kanyang sitwasyon, which Lolo Longhair didn't have kasi kahit na nung ginugupit ay tinatanggap niya ang kanyang pagkatalo, but you don't feel it. Iyon.
Salamat. Si Mim, Sir Mim Nadera. Tapos, Jun Cruz Reyes at Rolando Tolentino.
Actually, nag-audition ako, hindi ako tinanggap ni Jay, kaya gaganti ako. Pagbati, ako na ba? Pagbati sa'yo, Jay, pero pagbati rin doon sa mga comment na naisip ko tuloy kanina nung binabanggit yung poetics, yung pagbanggit mo ng Bulaga, tapos mulat, parang hindi matagal yung pagbulaga, parang hindi nang hindi ko buti na nagsalita, hindi na ako magsasalita sana kaya na nagsalita sa Sir Boots. Parang dagdag doon sa sinabi nilang lahat. Bakit Dula ang napili mong pang-entablado? Kung ako magbibihis pa para manood ng Dula at pumunta sa lugar ninyo, pipiliin ko na lang yung telebisyon. Hindi na ako aalis sa bahay, napapanood ko rin yung maaring gusto ko pang gawin. Versus, pagdula, magre-rehearse ka, sa dula mo, may revision pa, may kung ano-ano pa. Mahirap ang production, mahirap ang sponsor at iba pa. Versus, kung gagawa tayo ng pelikula, mabibit-bit mo kahit saan, isang magandang take, o paulit-ulit na take, at yun na lang kukunin mo, madadala mo sa Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. So, itong tanong ko na wala na dun sa usapan ng anyo, no? So, bakit ito sinulat mong para pang-entablado? So, dagdag dun sa kanina, dumaan ba ito sa proseso ng kumpanya ninyo para aralin yung mahirap pumili ng, iniisip ko lang sa production, mahirap mag-cast ng lolo na mahaba ang buhok, tapos gugupitin mo. Ibig sabihin, kung tulayan, uulitin mo ulit sa susunod na linggo, naputol mo na eh. So, ibig sabihin, wig yung gagamitin mo. Na hindi na, yung ba, versus kung pelikula, di ba, naisip mo yung, mababaw yan, pero, alam mo, tsaka mahirap kumuha ng mga kagaya, kung halimbawa limitado sa company ninyo, yung lolo na gano'n, no? Magdagdag pa doon sa isang sinabi niyo. So, maski na iniisip ko na nga ngayon yung nagkaroon ba tayo, yung proseso, ito ba yung ating sasabihin, natalo tayo? Ganito ba yung paraan natin para mabawi natin yung pagkatalo natin? Ito ba yung paraan? Dumaan ba sa proseso? Halimbawa, nagpaaral, ito ba yung dapat na yung setting nasa home for the aged, tama no? Na LC Gatches kasi naalala ko yung LC. Tapos yung sa OFW, yun din ba ang dapat nating kausapin? So, ano yung, ito yung problema, tama si Sir Butch, sa amin, yung bilihan ng boto sa antas ng barangay. No, yung mga, bakit nila gusto si Duterte? Samantalang, di ba, nakapag-aral itong mga to, anong problema? Ang galit ng iba. Masyadong, halimbawa, snap ang mga sina Pinoy, no? Na mapanghamak sa kapwa. Yung, alam ba, yung hindi nila pinapansin ngayon, parang revenge of the dinners ng mga hampas lupa. ang nangyayari ngayon. So maraming dapat araling salik, no, para aralin yung ating pagkatalo. Bukod sa siyempre may dayaan na hindi naman natin pa napapatunayan. So yung mga ganun po ba? So bukod dun sa aralin natin yung problema, so ano ngayon yung solusyon na ating ibibigay? Kasi napakahirap para sa tanghalan, ano, para makarecover sa... Iniisip ko rin yung sino-sino yung mapapanoorin natin, yung mga bata ba na high school, K-12. O sino pa? Yung mga yapis na taga Makati, no? Yung estudyante sa UP na naman ba? O estudyante sa Ateneo, Lasal, Binild, UST. So, yun lang yung mga... Bakit yung Dula ang dapat na anyo dito? Salamat.
Si Jun Cruz Reyes.
Oo, yung... Gusto ko yung Lolo Longer kasi nakaka-relate ako dun eh. Naalala ko yung Woodstock ng mga ganon. Yung ano, sagot yun sa yung social media, yung pangalawa. Ito pang bata to. Pero yung merong basic na nakalimutan natin eh. Yung noon pa yun eh, yung for whom. Sino ba talaga ang gusto nating manood nito? Kung mapapansin nyo, napaka-middle class. Na yung, and therefore, kukunti lang. Tapos yung immediacy, iba naman yung problema ng middle class sa problema ng let's say, ng mas malaking bahagi ng lipunan. Ang ibig kong sabihin na lang para madali-dali yung sa topic, ano na yung new normal? Eh, yun lang, buong-buo na yung topic. Eh. Imagine yung mahirap ka, na bawal ka lumabas ng nakahubad. Eh, paano ngayon kung bahay mo wala namang aircon? Bawal tumambay. Eh, paano ngayon 3 pamilya kayo sa bahay? So, bakit kita papanoorin? Ano yung immediacy? Tapos yung tokhang, normal na yan eh. Tapos yung pagpumatay ka ng aso, huwag mo gagawin yun. Animal rights yung binabiolate mo. Pumatay ka na lang ng tao. Normal na yun eh. So ang dami-daming irony na yung, halimbawa, umalis ka ng probinsya kasi may giyera. Tapos pagdating mo rito, may giyera din. No, yung sa dulo, kasi yung Dula, kaya yan noong umpisa ng martial law, kaya yan ang ina-advise na isulat ng mga artists kasi immediate, kita mo agad yung effect. Yung kwento, matagal pa yun eh. Ipipila mo pa, ito na yung problema, nilulutas na. But then, iniisip ko rin naman, kaya yan may ikli, baka kako flash yan eh. Yung bago dumating yung manghuhuli sa'yo, nakaalis ka na. Kaya kailangan niyang maikli at mabilis ang pagtatanghal. Sa dulo, ano na yung magiging evolution ng Dula sa panahon ng red tagging? Paano mo i-discuss? Kaya nag-Baquiran yun, para yung merong yung audience participation. Kaya sa kanayunan, dati ang ginagamit is smiling eh. Nagdidebate sila ng padula. Pero wala na namang nagre-report sa atin yung... ibig sabihin, nabago yung panahon. Ano yung bagong anyo? Ano yung sasagot doon sa bagong realidad? Actually, nag-survey ako bago mag-election. Kaalam ko matatalo si Lenny. Sinurvey ko lang yung mga kapitbahay ko, mga kamag-anak ko. Nakita ko, mas hindi alam yung problema. Yung hindi nagbabasa ng dyaryo, yung mga kamag-anak ko to, Marcos. Tapos yung mahilig sa telenovela, Isko. Tapos yung mga may utak na kahit mga bata, Lenny. Ang laki ng problema talaga ng emergency. Bilangan ng paramihan ng kumpare, paramihan ng kumari. Magiging trapo ka din. Yung gagapangin mo sila, pero kulang. Ang ibig kong sabihin, yung mga ganitong dula, may design ito eh. Tapos may nito eh, may plano. Kasi yung tinitingnan ko yung biography mo, nakakahanga ka. Dami-dami mong energy. Yung so much passion sa ginagawa mo. Imagine magkautang-utang ka. Hindi ako magbabayad ng 1 milyon. Isasanla ko yung nanay ko. Ikaw magbayad yan. Yung nararamdaman ko yung pagmamahal mo sa ginagawa eh. But then, naisip ko din, kasi iba naman talaga yung problema ng Maynila. Iba naman yung problema pag lumabas ka ng Maynila. At yung katangian ng panitikan yung tinatawag natin panitikan ng Pilipinas, kay Tulayan, kay Nobela yan, panitikan lang yan ng NCR eh. O panitikan ng 4 na universidad na hindi naman ito yung realidad. So, ang dami-daming hamon. Nasubukan mo bang ilabas ito na dinala mo sa isang yung mga taniman ng sibuyas, no? Imagine, may dagat ka, wala kang isda, wala kang asin. May bukid ka, wala kang bigas, wala kang sibuyas, wala kang baboy, wala kang manok. Tingin ko ito yung problema na hindi si Tata Longhair, no? Ako gusto ko yun, no? Pero hindi naman ako yung Pilipinas. Lalo na yung maliwanag naman sa'yo na may advocacy ka. So, hindi ko na matatanong kung collectivize ka dahil si Bim bahala sa'yo. No? Yun lang.
Dula ni Daryl yan, kakalabanin.
Napakasikat pa man din nun. Salamat po Sir Jun. Ang huli nating magbibigay ng second to the last, si Sir Roland, tapos si Kate may pahabol. Tapos papakinggan natin si PJ. Sige po, Sir Roland.
While sympathetic ako dito sa idea ng political theater or protest literature, para medyo nalilito ako dito sa klase ng dula, yung laman niya, saka yung audience niya, no? Para may disjunct na klase. Kasi kung ang gusto natin i-convert yung bulto na bumoto for BBM, supported BBM, then we talk about the CDE audience na maparealize sa kanila na things need to change para mabago talaga yung actual na sitwasyon. Pero napaka-middle class naman ng content ng yung laman nung dulaan, na yung 2 dula, na ang audience ba naman nito, dahil pinalabas mo to sa mall, sa eskwelahan, ay yung middle class ulit na ipagpatuloy nila yung laban. So, palagi ko mahina kung middle class pa rin ang itatarget natin kasi nga ay middle class is always wavering. Pagkatapos ng defeat ni Lenny or nung triumph ng BBM ay medyo may comfort zone na life goes on lang. Pero ang mas powerful, ang mas at siguro yun yung familiarity mo ito middle class. Pero samantalang ang kailangan talaga natin trabahuin as writers too ay yung how do we address CDE at yun naman yung political agenda mo rin. So kailangan i-overall yung konsepto ng political theater. For most part, kailangan meron kang parang site-based na kung saan ay mari mo i-test. Kunyari, kung itong Dilabay pinalabas sa basketball court ng barangay, ay ano yung magiging adjustments para maintindihan ito ng mga tao? Ano yung tweaking ng mga details na presenta mo dyan, pagpaliwanag ng basic things like red tagging sa kanila, etc. And then getting feedback sa mall siguro, ewan ko kung nagkakaroon pa kayo ng Q&A or interaction with audiences. Samantala sa basketball court o sa barangay, merong ganong klaseng kwan. So, baka pwedeng pag-aralan. And then yung nasa CDE naman na to, sila naman yung may possibility pa for politicization. Yung mga jeepney drivers na bumoto sa kanila na eventually had to strike, mag-transport strike, nagbabago rin ang kanilang pananaw kay BBM. So how do we handle those? Kasi nga, ang nakafocus ka lang, yung dalawang dula sa triumph ni si BBM sa elections. And it has to move out, baka sa ibang dula, it has to move outside that frame. At last na lang, kailangan siguro iwasan natin yung macho tendencies or macho feels ng at least yung dalawang dula. Kasi in the age of toxic masculinity, na fina-flag na ito at hindi na siya viable detail or feels na kailangan pang na present sa mga, lalo for political theater.
Thank you. Bago magsala si Kate, request lang din po ako na after ni Kate, kahit dagdag na 5 minutes lang para kay BJ, para magpaliwanag.
I was wondering, it's not mentioned how old Lolo Long here is. How old is he? 70-ish. It's like my dad's age. So my response is it's a personal reaction, and so when Vida mentioned how problematic the age difference was, I realized I didn't have a problem with it, and so in reading this, it's opened up my eyes to how I feel like I've been desensitized. So, backstory, my parents married, they were teenagers. My dad kept getting older, but his taste in women didn't change. So he always fancied teenagers. And am I saying this in the live stream? Oh my God. No, he won't watch this. So when I was in high school, I'm so sorry, Dad. When I was in high school, well, I knew he already fancied these girls my age, and I just told him, Papa, I can't do anything about your preference, but if you don't mind, can you just not date anyone in my circle? Yeah, take a boundary, and then, but no. He fell in love with somebody who was in my class. So anyway, that's another short story for my book. So what I'm saying is that my dad is married to somebody 40 years his junior. And I don't know if I've desensitized myself or I've just kind of learned to accept something that's beyond my control. But I think it's very revealing that I was not bothered by the age difference. So now I'm like, oh my God, maybe I need to think about that, you know? So yeah, thank you. That's it.
On that note, thank you. That happy note na live stream. Maraming salamat po sa mga komento. Si BJ lang pipasagutin ko at i-relay lang yung notes. Pero well noted po ito ko sa sensitivity sa intersectionality, pagharap ng tamang form at iba pa. Mga kaibigan, na ito po si BJ Crisostomo.
Salamat po sa lahat. Tinatanggap ko po lahat ng mga komento ninyo. Maraming pag-iisipan. Pero sasagutin ko lang yung ilan sa mga tanong na na-note down ko. Yes, mabilis siguro yung jump niya. Siguro sa nature din ng project na short play siya. Alam ko na siya excuse, pero baka pwede siya isipin sa pag-revise na mas... Dahil short play siya, dahil hindi lang naman ako yung nagpa-perform noon, meron din ako ibang kasama. So I can't take up the entire time. So yun yung dahilan kaya maikli siya. Yes po, pwede siya maging film. Mas madali naman. Pwede pong gawin yon. Tapos noon, dalhin sa labas, dalhin sa mga bukiran. Gusto namin po gawin yon eventually. Sadly, wala pa kaming, meron na. Pero yung panahon na nag-stage kami sa yung 6 na palabas na natukoy ko kanina, wala pa kaming contact sa ganong klaseng community. Ngayon meron na po. At gusto rin po namin talaga subukan. Yung sa CVE na kailangan nating kausapin para sa tunay na pagbabago. At tama naman po ito, siguro hindi ko na siguro siya magagamit sa 2 dulang ito, siguro moving forward na lang yan. Kung sa susunod na pagsusulat ng isang political na pyesa rin. Yung toxic masculinity, alam kong to me, tapos na parang na-stress din siya na bakit ganun si Lolo Longhair. Yun nga, dapat siya yung flag bearer ng laban ng bayan, bakit manyakis. Sa totoo lang, well, baka coming from a privileged male din to, sa utak ko ay naglalaro lang sila, gano'n. Pero the entire point was to make Lolo Longhair endearing and fun, gano'n. Natangin-shit lang siya, laro lang siya, wala talaga manyak feel si LC. Hindi ka talaga minamanyak si LC. Pero yes, yung pinalabas nga siya, meron siyang gano'ng yung palad. So, magiging mas ingat po ako doon. Anything else? Q&A. Yes po, nagkaroon po ng Q&A sa bawat, after every piece ng mula at nagkakaroon po ng Q&A para lang mas malinaw yung mga bagay-bagay. Ayun po, meron po ba sa vlog? Okay na, maraming salamat po sa ating lahat.
Pero may option na dalhin sa regional manager, kapilalang doktor.
frequent theaters. Pero most of them, parang publicity lang naman eh. Konti lang yung actual na review talaga. Pages. Yeah.
Very pleasant afternoon to all of you. In a short while, we will hear from stories like hers, like the one that you're discussing today, are sort of easy to this is a work where we find words we don't usually come across in Philippine literature. Words like Chateaubriand, profiterole, some words that you might need to look up. In other words, we are brought to some extent to what we might often imagine as the world of the crazy rich and famous, and in the same way that there is, shall we say, poverty porn, some of us might think that, well, so there's also what, privilege porn or crazy rich porn. And almost by instinct, I'm sure that many of us who are more traditionally oriented to the other side of the social spectrum would react to such material but suspicion and again the attitude that there's nothing good that can come out of this, because it's that other world behind gated fences and so on. So why is this story here? Why did not only me, but those of us who read through the many entries or many applications to this workshop mark it as being worthy of being here? And what I would like to do this afternoon is probably to remind us that there are many kinds of stories and many kinds of subjects, and that there are pleasures and accomplishments to be found in these different kinds, and that in what may seem to be a story of upper class manners, there are important and serious social resonances to be found. I did not know Kate or know about Kate when I read the draft of this story. I mean, your stories came to us with names on them, but not that we cared. I didn't know who I was reading. Only after we had accepted it did I, and only after I realized that it was going to be assigned to me, did I Google the name Kate Torralba, and was I surprised? I said, matanda ka na talaga. You don't know what's going on, what people are doing, and so on. Because Kate, as you know by now, more than I do, because I wasn't here yesterday, is one of those multi-talented creatives whose interests span many different kinds of creative expression. And for her in particular, it's her music that she finds fulfillment in, aside from her writing and her design. And as a musician, she is not only a singer, but also a performer and a composer. So nandiyan na lahat. And it's always interesting when an artist from one field moves into another. And we wonder if her view of the world will translate from one form to the other, or if they can handle themselves as confidently in prose as they can, say, in painting or in some other genre. This calls to mind that even, let's say, within the writing profession, I have had the biggest problems with, let's say, poets and journalists moving into fiction. Hindi ko magaling ka dun sa isa, automatically kaya mong gawin yung isa, because different instincts are involved. Kaya dito, transitioning from music to writing, and I'm not saying na ngayon lang ito nangyari. I'm sure Kate has done a lot of other writing before, so medyo magkasabayan. Pero who is Kate Torralba, the musician, and who is Kate Torralba, the writer? In her critical preface to her work, she says that she's now ready to explore writing wherever it takes her, and what she has presented us with is a story of an upper class or upper middle class couple going out on a date. And again, that may seem, on top of everything else we're going through, that may seem trivial. But what happens in this piece is that what looks like it's going to be another of those upper class parodies that we've seen before. Yung bang mag-create ka ng mga ganitong character basically para pagtawanan. Which of course makes us feel good, di ba? Kasi hindi tayo ganun eh. Hindi naman natin tikman yan. So, sige, i-set up natin yan para pakita natin kung gaano sila ka-silly and so on. And you come out of that feeling, okay, mas mabuti pa tayong mga mahihirap. Hindi natin pinagdadaanan yan. There's almost there's a suggestion at the beginning na baka doon pupunta, pero it doesn't. It actually, all of a sudden, at least for me, the story gets humanized. And the characters become individuated. And a lot of that happens because of this totally unexpected turn when her zipper breaks or something in her dress breaks, and the surgeon now has to attend to it, and they become perfectly normal people and finally can start talking to each other. It may not be the kind of ending that we were looking for, or we may not even still find it satisfying, but for me, it brings me to new territory with characters whom I thought I knew. So I'm going to stop there, and of course, you may have different opinions, and we'll be happy to hear them. But now let me have Kate introduce herself through the medium that she's somewhat more familiar with, through her music. Take it away, Kate. Oops. Microphone's not working.
Thank you so much, Sir Rooch. I've never been introduced like that before. Show, and this is like the world premiere of the song. Right. Okay. So that song is well, it's the opening song of this one woman musical where I talk about my life and my journey as a middle-aged woman who's been looking for a husband since she was 13. So I've basically been looking for a husband since, okay, God, 30 years. Oh no, now people don't know how old I am. I'm trying to combat ageism, so I try not to show my age, but next slide, please. So, yes, I'm Kate Torralba, and I started out as a classical pianist as a child. I learned to play piano by ear at 4. Played my first concert in the US at 9, and I got a piano scholarship, but discovered rock music and fashion, and worked at the Senate, and discovered Manila, and went to London. It's a long story, it's politics, but basically I love fooling around with different mediums. So the song became a music film, a collaboration with Lee Rainey. The next slide, please. And so I want you to see, catch glimpses of my colorful world. And next slide, please. And actually, this is a film that I can share with you later after dinner if you want to watch. So I had a scholarship from a Moral Fund, studying film directing with Jose Javier Reyes, and I made a pandemic film. I shot it at home, at my father's home during the pandemic, and basically it's a story of a widow who is coping with the grief of losing her husband to COVID, but it's actually next slide, please. Oh, go back. Sorry. Go back. It's actually a crossover from my song Pictures, which was in my poetics. So I was hung up on this guy I couldn't have for 12 years. And then when I discovered film, I thought I'd come to terms with my feelings about it. But then the ghost was still there, and I decided that in the film, I would actually end up with a guy. I married him, and then I killed him. And he was mine forever. And I thought it's a strange power writers have. You can make your own endings, you can have the things you couldn't have. The things you pined for so long, you can have. And the next slide, please. And so in my work, I have a very intuitive, spontaneous, creative process. I don't really think things through. I don't have prompts. It always is born out of an emotion. Like that song, Love is a Tragedy, it wrote itself. I had no intention to write a song with that theme. It was just the mood, and the lyrics are kind of stream of consciousness. That's why maybe narrative-wise, I don't know if it's good, but so anyway, another example, go back, please. I did a experimental film where I also fooled with a kind of an obsolete medium. I did a stop-motion film of myself, my naked body, and I covered myself in bits of masking tape, and I used like an X-ray treatment just because. I felt like it was a commentary on feeling suffocated and drowning and feeling like society really has so much expected of women. And me personally, I grew up in Cebu, and I grew up on an island where everyone knew everyone, and there were courtships, and people went to high school and university with their sweethearts, and they would get married after school. And I almost did. My first engagement, I was 21, and then I thought, there must be more to life than being barefoot and pregnant in Cebu, married to a rich guy. There must be more. And so my journey as an artist really has been about trying to get these questions answered. I grew up in a very kind of privileged, entitled environment. And as I grew up and discovered the world, I realized that there are a lot of problematic things in my life, and I cope through my art. Next slide, please. During the pandemic, my last my last occupation was a touring musician based in London. And so I would travel the world and sing at rich people's parties. And I saw very, very many interesting things. At the same time, continued my pursuit as a single woman, looking for a partner. And this is the first short film that I made. I got my first short film grant for the Without Sound International Film Fest, and I was a finalist there. The story basically is it's an homage to Chaplin, because there was a theme, 1920s silent cinema, but the topic at hand was about online dating and a lot of the pretense involved, and just talking to so many people. So that's the first proper film that I mounted and shot. And the next slide, please. And then I have I call it a slow burn project now. This is Hantok. It's actually going to be my first feature film. And so we worked on it in the Cinemalaya Film Lab, and it's a story about 4 Visayan gold diggers. Women looking for rich men to marry, because when I grew up, I noticed that it would not be talked about in the press, or people didn't openly discuss it, but there was this phenomenon of hantok, that nakahantok ka, naka-jackpot ka, you married well, you married up, or you married a foreigner, and so that's what it discusses. And it's close to my heart, because I was raised to be somebody's wife. I was raised to marry well, and I'm still single. So the conversation continues. And next slide. So what's happening now in my life is that I'm at a crossroad, and I'm realizing that I'm in my 40s. I'm nowhere near what I envisioned my life to be. There's no white picket fence, no husband, no babies, no dog. And I feel this yearning from my musical self, because it's my most comfortable medium. That's it's my element, being behind that piano. I want to cross over to my literary self, where I can actually tell stories that reflect the burdens that I carry as a supposedly modern Filipina woman. And I was born in the late 70s, and so in the middle of the analog and digital generation, I kind of saw that transition, and it's a lot to process. And so I've been trying to navigate this new paradigm as somebody who's still quite conservative, but at the same time, I know that I need to open up to. There's an album by a band called Everything But the Girl called Adapt or Die. So I must adapt. And so I get very impulsive. So I acknowledge I am a little intimidated by all the academic writers here, but I always follow my gut, and I had my gut 2 years ago to pester a friend to get me into one of Jing Hidalgo's workshops. And this Amadito and Amanda is actually the first short story I've ever written outside of high school, and I don't even first read it to any, but it's my first assignment, and I didn't know it would take me here. So I'm kind of mind blown and just amazed at how the work. Even if at the time it doesn't feel so significant, you don't know where your work will take you. And I think that's the power of being a writer, of being a creative, because you create something that is a representation of who you are and the things that matter to you, and you don't know who that will resonate with. You don't know who will like it, but that's the beauty of the work. The work speaks for itself, and there is a resonance that the work brings that will attract the people who are meant to appreciate you, the people who will support you and be inspired and moved by the kind of work that you do. I find so much pleasure in playing, even if nobody's watching. It gives me so much satisfaction. But if there's one person who says, "Oh, I like that song. Oh, I could relate to that song," I feel a sense of fulfillment that somebody's able to connect with my work, and so I'm going to continue now to talk about my. Oh, go back. Sorry. Okay, so I did the assignment for Jane's class, and then Jane said, "Oh, if you continue to write in this vein, then maybe a collection." And then I just wrote this in a note on my phone, and then I just kind of thought, oh, well, Amadito and Amanda could be the first story. And then I just came up with like all the story concepts of, basically, that's why it's tentatively entitled, It's Only Fiction Because I Need to Change Their Names. So, thinly veiled stories of my life. And so maybe I could discuss three, maybe. Oh, you already read Amadito and Amanda, which we'll discuss later. This one's interesting. I love him, but he has a dead wife, aka what not to do when dating a widower. It's very interesting. I have a story called My Ovaries Are Dying, which is connected with how to approach a sperminator. There's a story, A Date with Mr. Eligible. I went out with supposedly one of Manala's most eligible men, and I will not give away the punchline, but it's a very cool story. And so, yes, this is going to be my first collection of stories, and I feel very honored that I get to have your feedback, because that's how the work gets refined. And I'm very grateful that you've read my story, and I'm very interested to hear what you think of it. And I guess, yeah, that's it for now. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Kay, for that introduction. I think we're good. And you've whetted our appetite for your forthcoming works. But now let's turn the floor to our fellows and panelists to get their feedback on your piece. Sino magsisimula? Yes, please, Anna. Yeah.
Hi. Yeah. I think I wouldn't be alone in saying that I thoroughly enjoyed the piece. From your poetics, I read something of your personal history, and I think that you're fortunate to be in a particular position to write about certain things. My mother and her friends, they have this term na aspo. I don't know if you've heard it before. Aspo, anak sa pobre. It doesn't really refer to people who are the children of those who are literally poor, but it refers to those who are the children of those whose circumstances have changed as the world changed. So they may have been born into families of privilege and power, but the world changes, and the position of these people must change as well. And because I think from your poetics, you find yourself in a similar position. It's like the world you were raised for, to be a good wife to a particular kind of man, no longer exists, or is no longer enough. And so here we are. I find that the story in general, if we were to put aside guilt, in enjoying sensual pleasures in the reading of it, and I feel we shouldn't apologize for enjoying these things. Generally, the story puts me in mind, let's say, of the work of Anais Nin or Colette, or yung ganon. These are French women who wrote things that perhaps would have been considered indulgent or too personal in their time. But there is space for that. Meron tayong mga social realist writers na French who are writing with them, who wrote about let's say, poverty, yung mga mabibigat na issues. But these matters that they wrote about... Oh, sorry. You cannot hear. It's on. Thank you. How much of that did you not catch? What? You heard everything? Okay, how about the rest? Sa likod po ba, narinig nga? Yes? The French, right? Okay. Yeah. So, these women were writing things, yun nga, that might have been considered by some indulgent or too personal. And yet, this was important for me as a woman, as a young woman even, and up to now. It was very important to read these things. For example, yung tone nung story mo puts me also in mind of the poet Dorothy Parker. Yung, diba, very, she writes about society, but there's a certain kind of cleverness, and more than cleverness, may konting hapde. For example, she has this poem called One Perfect Rose. How this man that she really likes sends her perfect rose, and then she says, why does nobody send me one perfect limousine? Why is it always one perfect rose? Yung ganon. So may parang ganong air, no, or tone yung stories. Perhaps if I would make a comment, a suggestion as well. Since the description of yung mga central aspects, the sights, the sounds, the tastes, are beautiful and they're already there. Perhaps pwede nating dagdagan yung hapde, the bite. Because, things that are sweet are better when they're taken with a little spice. So perhaps there's room in this story for that. Like, for example, si Anais Nin, she writes about beautiful clothing or delicious food or handsome men, unapologetically. But then she also philosophizes about the nature of desire in her work. Her relationship with her body, or her observations about how other people feel about their bodies and how their bodies interact with hers. Something like that. So, yun, maybe you could add that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great insight.
Yes, thank you very much, Anna, for those wonderful comments. Sino pa? Yes, Vida, please.
Okay. Hi. I would buy your collection off the bat. That's like the highest compliment I can give you.
Pre-sale.
Yes, excellent. Great. Okay. I agree with a lot of si Maui's comments. So, I guess I'm not quite looking for philosophy so much as insight. Because your story here has one layer, and that's perfectly fine actually, and I'll get into why later. But if you want to have 2 layers, I guess what I am looking for is, what did I write here? So these 2 people come into this date with very set notions of how they want the date to go and what the other person is like. And you kind of do it already, but I was looking for a more explicit, an evolution of their impressions and beliefs and perspectives, not just of the other person, but what the other person symbolizes to them. So what does Amadito symbolize to Mandy? What does Mandy symbolize to Amadito? I'm looking for how that has changed at the end of this date. And, okay. So when I was talking about 1 layer or 2 in a story, it pushes me to ask you, and this is not a criticism on you or anything, but since you're transitioning from many different fields into this one, and you have a pretty good idea of what you want to do with your collection, then I think now is a good time to be more intentional about thinking about what kind of writer you want to be. Because you could easily be a straight-up romance writer, or you could go the Dorothy Parker route. And I just think there's so much possibility here, and I just want to thank you for the pleasure of reading this story.
Thank you, Vida. It's very kind. Thank you.
Who next? Yes, May.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for a really entertaining story, Kate. There are just 3 points maybe that you can consider, because I really enjoyed it as is. But maybe you can consider this things. The relationship between Mother and Amanda was engaging and builds up nicely to the date. But then when you spoke about her ex, I found it kind of bitten, and I was more interested in that than the banter between Mother and Amanda. So I wanted to know more about her ex and their relationship, and whether she saw any red flags before Diwata Bahaghari, which I thought was a genius name because I can imagine how she looks like. So there, that's the first point. So yung second, the plot twist reveals two charismatic and relatable characters. I really liked them after this plot twist because before the plot twist, Amanda seemed dead. So she was so passive to everything that was happening around her. Her mother's fussing over her, and the date, she was parang wala na ba siyang opinion? Parang, di ba, she was just going along. Tapos si Amadito, who I found medyo parang yucky first date, di ba? He became more interesting after the plot twist. So, for the ending, I was wishing for a more detailed telling of their conversation. Rather, kasi you just mentioned that they had parang more conversation about their relationships on the way home. I wanted to hear just what they talked about and how maybe Amadito inspired Amanda with his love for Michelle, and how Amanda inspired Amadito to fight for his love. So, yung isa pa, nitpick na lang. Yung names, kasi nga, tuwa ako doon sa Diwata Bahaghari. Pati si Amadito and Amanda, both are based on the Spanish word amar. Hindi ba? Love. It's about love.
Wow, that's so good. I didn't even think about it.
So, yun, parang ang ganda. Pero medyo naguluhan ako lang and medyo na-annoy dun sa yung mga tinwist na brand names. Kasi since inadmit naman mo as narrator that they were mga counterfeit items, maybe you could have used the real brand names na. So, parang siguro naman, hindi ka naman siguro madedemanda ng mga brand names na to. But thank you so much for a very entertaining story. I loved it.
Next, yes, Jing, then Dominic.
Yeah. Hi, Kate. I'm not going to say very much about your story. You already know what I think of your story. No? Now, about that list that you presented for your project, what you hope to do, my impression is that you intend to write all these stories, and they're going to be more or less like this one. Different aspects of your life, which is fine if that's what you want to do. So now I'm going to suggest something for the next project. Maybe you want to, instead of staying on the surface and dealing with manners, basically, go the next level. A good example of a woman, an upper-class woman, who wrote basically about her life, which is very limited in terms of class. Jane Austen, of course. But a more modern example would be Virginia Woolf, who also had pioneered in a particular type of style. So maybe that's where you could take it afterwards, which I'm sure you're capable of doing.
Jane, Dominic, then Jim.
Hi, Kate. Just want to say, well, first off, like Vida said, I will buy this when it comes out. So, but actually, building up on something others have said, or I was thinking about this since earlier, in terms of the question of if you wanted to add another layer or add some spice to it, I was thinking, not necessarily so much the philosophizing of it, because I'm not sure that's what you want to do. But I was thinking that first, because I already kind of sensed it in the piece itself. I sensed some presence of it at least, which is you may sharpen, for example, perhaps the description of the kind of I don't know if this is the right term, the psychic pain that's there, because there does feel like there's a strong personal pain in some of the elements there, and maybe perhaps because the piece was meant to be, there was an idea behind the piece that this is going to be a funny little piece, and so that's it. The pain aspect was kind of buried and not really discussed much. But in the piece itself, in the poetics, in the song earlier, whether or not you planned the song, I could tell that it's there. And even if the goal for the stories in the end of the day will be mostly like more humor, even if that's the goal, I think exploring that element adds depth to the humor also. They work together. The humor adds an element to the pain also adds a certain depth to the humor, and then it just becomes stronger overall. Of course, that's difficult because you're gonna have to explore the pain inside you, but if you're up to it, I think that will actually make the stories much stronger. Yeah. Thank you.
Jimmy?
I would my only suggestion, Kate, make the characters more real. Yeah, more real. First of all, to yourself as the writer, and always have the reader in mind. To make your characters also as real to you, also to the reader. No, real. No. To make that concrete, that suggestion, no, I want to know more about Tonyo. How did that come about? How did that come about that he became your live-in boyfriend? How did that come about? If you tell that part of what is her name? Basta. If you dwell on that, it will also give me an idea of what kind of person this Amanda is. Di ba? How did that come about? Oh, then I will know better Amanda. I know nothing practically about Amadito. I know something about about the mother of Amanda. Di ba? The way, why is your mother like that? And what about your papa? Is your mother divorced or separated from the husband or died very early or what? Yeah. Yung Amadito, he does not come real to me also. Yeah. So it's all a question of more reality in the short story. Yeah, that's all I know. Okay.
Okay, just before that, just to kind of concretize that point. One of the things that you can consider following the previous comments is to move this story out of its kind of allegorical plane, like the use of the fake names, the Amado Amadita, because here the design is a certain design is obvious. But if you were to replace those with their real life equivalents, then then you are dealing with the world as it is, and that puts you on firmer ground. I think. I mean, if that's what you want to do, if that's consistent with your sensibility, which I tend to agree that it will probably be a stronger story that way without the artifice above it. Okay, now let's move to Bowman and then to Luna.
Okay,
And then,
sorry.
Yeah, come on.
Salamat sa kwento, Kate. At tulad sinabi ng iba, yun nga, talagang masaya basahin, ano? At gusto namin makabasa ng marami pa. Kanina kausap ko pala si May, ano? Si May nagtuturo siya ng fine arts, no, for a long time, then before. And parang just to, I think, to make the dialogue, I think a bit more, for me, siguro more realistic. It's just that yung isang tanong ng isang character sort of struck me as flabbergasting, no? Yung tanong, so you're an artist. What kind of an artist are you? Ano? Yung tanong na ganyan, you could answer it in so many ways. Like you could say, I'm a sculptor, or I paint cats, or I do surrealist work. Ganyan. Medyo complex, no? But in real conversation, what would you probably say? Siguro, you're a painter. What do you paint? I paint landscapes. I paint what? No? Parang, but if you ask, what kind of an artist are you? And then the person answers, I'm an abstract artist. Parang it's not self-evident that question would give that kind of answer. I mean, of course, there's always this accident of a question and the answer that results from it. Pero parang, if you ask an artist, what kind of an artist are you? Parang, ang hirap sagutin eh. Anong klaseng sagot ba yung hinahanap sa akin? Was it what I paint? What my medium is? The style that I do it in? Etc. So parang napaka puzzling ng question. It sort of takes you aback. If you were asked as an artist to this question, what will I answer? Ganon.
She could probably probe him back by dropping some names like, De Kooning, Basquiat, and ganun lang siya.
Can I add something?
Oh, sige.
Kate, Kate, I suggested na you make your characters become more real, no? Supposing you ask me, although you're not asking me, how do I make my characters more real? When you're writing your story, your characters must become real in your imagination. And then you find the words, action, whatnot, to make that character. In other words, you imagine the story yourself first. Yeah, where the characters really, how did they converse? Amanda and Amadito, how did they converse? It's their first date. I want to see how they were conversing. Yeah, make that more real. They were already together. Although at the end they decide it's no go. Diba? Anyway, suggestion lang.
Okay, Luna?
Just an observation about Amanda as character, how she's dressed in the, may tawag dun sa term dun sa damit eh, style me, o personal style na knock-off ng ano. And I'm thinking, parang konektado yung the presence of all those knock-off names with how Amanda was treated by the ex. And I think, para ma-develop yung idea na yon, parang nangangailangan ito ng mirroring from the outside para hindi masyadong insular or insulated yung dialogue nung dalawang characters. Kasi imposibleng nakatira ka sa Maynila na parang vacuum lahat na ang makikita mo, ito lang, puro pang mayaman, pang mataas,
Kasi kahit pa paano may masasagasaan ka na reminder that we are in the Philippines. So, parang hinahanap ko rin yon. Alam ko, baka masyadong sinasabi ni Sir Butch. I'm not even attempting to diminish the story. I loved it so much. May whimsy siya. Pero yung parang napansin ko doon sa whimsy, naging buwis siya or tax. Kasi while the male character had this narrative arc, na-develop siya, yung character ni Amanda dahil nga naging whimsy, o parang dinismiss lang yung naging treatment sa kanya, hindi mo masyadong napasok yung loob niya, how she really was. So parang, in the end, parang at pasensya kung baka overreading ito, I think it's also anti-love. Kung gusto ng sumulat yung ganong direction. Kasi parang iisipin mo rin, ang dami naman mga dates na nangyayaring ganito elsewhere. At kung tutuusin, ang mga partnerships din dun sa class na yun ay nabubuo sa ganitong uri ng mga dates. Pero it's about time that we also question yung ganong structure, yung ganong partnerships, di ba? And kung empty in the mouth yung pakiramdam ng totoo na counterpart dito, kaya ako rin siya gusto kasi parang may gaan Parang naging magkaibigan sila nung lalaki. At ayoko mawala yon kasi kasama rin naman yun doon sa pinaglalaban ng mga tatawagin na feminist, di ba? Na merong pagkakapantay-pantay at umuunlad. Yun lang.
So, good afternoon. Like Vida and Dom, I would buy that collection in a heartbeat. It reminds me of the opening epigraph of 500 Days of Summer. Everyone in this film is all of the characters in this film are works of fiction except name. So I like the concept of the collection, but I'd also like to suggest that maybe you could include some stories that are completely fictional, just to throw off the reader. Just so we're not sure if this is you, but this actually happened to you. Maybe something absurd or something inspired by other people. So just so it's not completely autobiographical, and it throws a wrench. Yeah, it makes it more fictional in a sense, even though we all know it's inspired by a lot of personal events. At the same time, I agree that maybe we could make the other characters come alive more, especially Tonyo, because clearly dala pa ni Amanda yung tinik ng relationship na yun. I mean, it was a long-term relationship. She was unceremoniously dumped for Diwata Baghari, the 14th artist. So parang I think that pain that Amanda is not exploring deserves a bit more exploration, a subtle kind of exploration in the story. It doesn't have to be directly addressed, but I think it has to be there has to be more. It has to be expounded on a bit more in the story, because it meant so much to her. It meant so much to her that she was craving attention from this dude she didn't even find attractive. That she felt the rejection when he said, "Oh, I'm not interested in you," even though she's not interested in him. So parang may dala siyang tinik na parang nag-gloss over lang, na baka dapat mas maungkat pa dun sa kwento. And parang yung sa dulo din naman, feeling ko masyadong mabilis yung naging friends sila, pero parang baka dapat mas may description pa nung car ride home, yung naging conversation nila doon, kasi parang yung friendship hindi natin ma-juxtapose yung stilted conversation during the very stuffy date versus dun sa naging mas relaxed sila after the surgery. And lastly, gusto ko lang po i-register na na-offend po ako sa page 59. I never imagined people in the medical profession to be so full of zeal and energy. I never imagined.
Thank you, Kate. Congratulations.
Charlson.
Okay, mukhang yung collection mo will be your dating history. But I enjoyed it, no? Pero I'm still looking for, to make it someone's story. Maybe probably Amanda. But then, finally, what do they, or what do Amanda, or what do each of them take away from the encounter? And what do we as readers take away from this encounter? Diba? Kasi you decided na hindi sila magkakatuluyan. And there is no suggestion na hindi, baka magkatuluyan sila. Diba? Wala namang
suggestion dito na gano'n. So, it's just an encounter, hindi na sila magkakatuluyan.
So what is it? It's a love story, an almost love story. Baka pwede. No? So he stitched her up. So we know he's a good guy in the end. No? At, pero what do we take away from the encounter? No? About these two people, or about this sort of relationship? Ano yung takeaway natin? No? If it's love, diba? Maraming love stories, diba? So, because it's another story about love, diba? About insight into the... So, hinahanap ko yun, diba? Otherwise, it's an anecdote, no? Well thought, told. So, yeah.
Dami mo namang hinahanap. Ganyan si Charles. Yes, Will. Si Will muna kasi hindi pa siya nakakapagsalita.
Yes. Yeah, I like date stories, no, which seem ridiculous and weird. Kasi people would think it's ridiculous or it's exaggerated, and in fact, that's really what happened pala, no. And I really felt that you had a lot of fun writing this piece. Parang you could really feel like whenever a writer enjoys writing that piece, parang the reader could really feel it. No? And having said that, I really like your usage of words, particularly, for example, yung comfort in carbohydrate form, scarf down his salad, hot cuisine meal with like a famished soldier, and burst into obnoxiously loud laughter. So parang they're very colorful, no? They're really very engaging. Parang you won't get bored reading the piece. And I think that's really the first criteria, no? For the piece to be engaging and a pleasure to read. So congratulations.
Sino susunod? Okay, Vida. Back to you.
I was listening to everybody talk about, well, Tonyo, and in the same vein as, baka dapat you should add a little more pain there. So there's this thing my friends and I do when we're talking about something that bothered us, and then someone is going to go on cue. So tell me about your childhood. And you have the mother here already, and this story is not about her, but she's intruding in it just as she intrudes in Mandy's life. So while I don't really want this story to be more about her than it already is, you could sort of have her have a moment where maybe she's realizing, okay, I'm kind of glossing over Amadito's rejection. I'm glossing over Tonya's rejection. Oh, it's because I'm trying not to listen to my mother. Yeah, that's just what I wanted to add.
Konting dagdag lang din na kasi nabanggit mo rin Sir Butch na daming hinaharap ni Sir Charlson sa kanila iba. Ako na-appreciate ko yung part na yung nga tungkol sa class A at iba pa. Sinabi mo rin naman Kate sa poetics mo na may aspect dito na yung biglang hirap aspect. At natutuwa ako na, di ba, kahit hindi mo siya mahanapan ng hardline na class analysis or something, nandun naman siya na yung kung baka may pain, baka kasama sa pain yung may isang nanay in particular na hindi maproseso na hindi tayo mayaman. Kasi kahit yung class A may levels ng pagka-peki yan. Yung may class A na mukhang legit. At alam mo may ganong mata yung nanay. At bit-bit din yun nung main character natin sa kanyang pagharap sa date. Tas inisip ko kung kaya pang i-push yun, pero baka kasi yung sinet na parameters, yun na talaga yung kaya sa story na iyon. Pero definitely naniniwala ako base dun sa poetics na kasi itong kwentong ito magaan, masaya, may certain beat, bilis. Baka dun sa mga kasunod, nandun pa yung feeling ko may capacity ka kasi for yung tone ba na mas seryoso, mas solemn, mas apparent yung pain. Pero baka hindi dito, baka dun sa kasunod. Pero definitely kita-kita sa poetics at yun, gaya ng mga kasama sa mga bibili ng libro.
Can I just jump on that for a minute? And this is for all the fellows, especially the fictionists here and the short story writers. Think about the design of a volume of short stories, all right? Especially your first one. Kasi kung walang lugar dito sa istoryang ito, marami pa naman siya ibang istoryang nakapila. So what I'm saying is that kung meron kang unang volume ng mga kwento mo, sabihin natin mga 10 to 12 stories yan, it's best to look at the range of these stories and kind of modulate them. Para hindi lahat isang registro lang yan. There should be opportunity for you to go off tangent in one or two stories, maybe even three. Take a reader away from what they are being habituated to. The different tone. Challenge yourself. For example, one of the challenges I give my writing students, I tell them, write me a story or talk to me about a situation. Write me a story about poverty set in one of the gated villages. All right? So, kasi pag sinabi nating poverty, ang unang darating I'm sure darating sa at least 50% sa utak ninyo, yung Sampaguita girl di ba, sa nagbebenta dyan sa stoplight o payatas o ganyan. Yung mga gasgas na cliche na. So pipilitin ko sila mag-isip, what is poverty in this privileged context? Na hindi yung visible, hindi yung nararanasan natin, maybe even poverty as a concept. So, in other words, that is your frontier. Push yourself in that direction. Para while we are chuckling through like 70% of your stories, there are a couple of pauses where we see na hindi lang yan ang mundo niya. I'm not saying you go dead serious, pero try to go off tangent because it's one total nagsisimula ka pa lang naman, pero halimbawa sa mga pintor na nakadiscover ng magandang ideya, tapos paulit-ulit na lang yun, na alam mong kaya ganito yan eh. Kasi bumenta na eh. It is also easy to get mannered in your writing. Na napipredict na ng doon naman pupunta yung storya na yan. No? So, nasa stage na kayo na nagsusulat kayo ng mga koleksyon. Yung koleksyon na yan, kailangan may disenyo din yan. So, ayun lang. Sino pa? 4:20 na tayo. We have 10 minutes left. Maybe one or two more. Sige, Jimmy.
Kate, there's something I like in that story. What I like, because it tells me a little more about the doctor. When he fixes the tear of the dress of Amanda. That one is a very good, it tells me a little more about the dog. He did not take advantage of her. Yeah, okay? Yeah, that's what I want to add.
Would you have done
there
that?
There are parts in your story that I like, no? Okay? Yeah.
Would you have done that, sabi ni Butch?
Ano?
Would you have done that?
No, because no, I would not have done that because I'm not that doctor. Remember this doctor? He's a I don't know what the scientific name is for a surgeon. This kind of surgeon. He knows how to
Stitch people up.
Put whatever medical need the patient has. Yeah. I'm not a doctor.
Oh, si Roland. Parang boxing.
What I like about this particular story, it's a date. Yun yung main scene, but it's able to bring in a lot of other things then, no? A lot of complexity, but pero gaya ng binabanggit, it needs to oscillate to various kinds of interesting directions. I also agree with Luna na and also it's a challenge ni Butch na para hindi naman maging one-note samba itong yung collection nito is also bringing in other forms of sociality para yung profiles na in which he engages with ay hindi isang demographic lang. Maybe that's also a way of creating another kind of arc among the stories na may gradations ng relations at hindi puro mga forlorn lovers lang at mga exes ang nandito sa stories na to. Charlson din.
Charlson.
Yung tinatanong ni Jamie, I think he actually stitches her up, di ba? He heals her. He's a doctor and actually he heals her. She is wounded, right? So she finds this healer in a way. And so when you say, let's take the story, parang yun. She actually finds this person who heals her. You know? Yun, you can go with that, no? Yeah.
Pero to that point, Charlson, I was going to say nga, na given this physical tear and the mending, there has to be a clearer emotional, psychological tear.
Oo nga, may yan ang kulang dun.
In the dress that is her life, that suddenly comes apart, and that may be left unmended. Hindi pa niya nasi-stitch up yan eh. Yung damit pa lang, unmended pa yung tear na yan, pero may pag-asa na pwede mangyari.
Yeah,
You know, who is that metaphorical doctor who will come along and sew her up in that way? So bukas pa yon. Pero yung analogy dyan, in terms of design, dapat mas malinaw. Ano, na may punit din sa buhay niya. Na hindi inaasahan.
But now that she is conscious of it, baka maging contrived.
No, kaya nga, that's where the art is na naglalagay ka nagbabaong ka ng dyan na. Actually, early on in the story, hindi pa alam yan eh. Doon pa lang lilitaw sa dulo yan na may punit eh. Saka mo palang i-connect yan eh. Kaya kailangan baon na baon yan. Hindi yung, ito iwasan ninyo, metaphor ako. Ito may meaning ako, yung mga ganyan ba. All right, I think it's time to hear again from Kate so she can respond to the questions you raised.
Thank you so much for your comments and your feedback. That's so valuable. I actually realized my journey is like studying script writing and writing that it's a big ask to have people read your work. And so I'm truly grateful to you guys for taking the time to read it. Thank you so much. And I think it's so exciting to hear your comments because, it's like you see angles of the story that I don't even see. And it really helped me in my revision. And I'd like to address some of a few of the comments. I think there was a comment about the brands. I guess it doesn't really register, but that's well, if you get to know me better, I have a sense of humor. I like puns and I like making fun of myself, and I like. Well, it's really me making fun of. Sorry, friends, but a lot of people in my world were really obsessed with brands. Like that's all they live for. But bless their hearts, bless their hearts. They used to buy bags from me. I used to sell bags. But I mean that was the purpose of. I mean, I just started with one like pun, and then it just went all the way. And as for the story, being parang bitin, well, to be honest with you, I woke up the morning of a deadline and I was like, what do I write about? Do I write a story about lining up for donuts, or do I write about the date? And I'm glad I chose. I'm glad it was about the date. I don't think Jean would have liked the donuts. Sorry, no. And yeah, and it was deadline, so I had 4 hours. So I just ended it there. But thank you for all these comments. So I have a whole notebook of them now. And yes, I will work on the story. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. A great moderator. Thank you. Thank you so much.
We want to hear the donut story.
If there's anybody else who may. Okay.
9 fellows are consulting with 3 panelists, 20 minutes each. So, what is it? Sai, can you come here and ask this well, now, 4:30 to 5:30.
So, what are the assignments?
Sai has a list. Can you use the microphone, Sai, so people would be reminded to say put here?
Ang nakaschedule po ngayon for consultation from 5 to 6 p.m. is Sir Butch, Ma'am Jing, and Sir Joey. Tapos for 5 to 5:20, sana pinroject ko na lang dito. Pero kay Sir Butch, si Sir Dom, Ma'am Jing, si Ma'am May, Sir Joey, Sir Will.